I know, we should know how to do this. Broadcaster 101, make sure the mic is on. Well, hello, everyone. Good afternoon, MLK Library. I want to thank Ms. Joy, fabulous name, by the way. We love that name, for welcoming us. And it is wonderful to be here in a space that honors, of course, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a disruptor in his own right, and wonderful to be here with Alencia. Please give Alencia another round of applause. This is her first book, y'all. Make her feel as important and special as she is. This is her first book. You can stand up. That's all right. Don't be shy. Yes. I love somebody who come with a sound effect.
I love my people.
Now, I want to also let you all know, just a matter of housekeeping, when we get toward the end of our conversation, we want to allow you to be a part of the conversation. So I have a piece of technology here, and it's really fabulous that this library believes that I'm good enough with technology to hand me an electronic thing. But it's going to be filled with your questions. There's going to be a little QR code that's going to pop up behind us, and when you see that QR code, you can use that to ask some questions so that we can include you in the conversation, and we'll cue you when it's time for that. So I want you guys to know that you can be a part of the conversation as well. But I want to start off, Alencia, by asking you, you wrote this book, and I think it's always important to ask people what the motivation was for creating something, because we know having a book is like having a baby. It's a book, baby.
Yes.
It's a lot. It's a lot of work. What was your motivation? What was behind it?
Well, first, thank you, Joy. My sister, my soror, someone who's opened so many doors for me. Thank you. Give it up for Joy Reid, please. And so this book, I felt like I always had a book in me, but didn't really think of the process. Like, oh, maybe one day I'll write a book. And I go back to the spring of 2020. We're in the thick of the pandemic. So there's the pandemic, there's the election, there's the murder of George Floyd and the uprise after it, all these things happening in the world. I'm currently fun employed at the time, because I was...
I too am fun employed.
Well, so you know how that is, right?
I know, I love it.
I had just gotten off of Senator Elizabeth Warren's campaign, and I was at home. I actually went to stay with my family in Virginia. I was at home thinking about everything that's happening in the world. I'm the daughter of a pastor. I also love me some Jesus for myself, not just because my daddy's a pastor.
Amen.
And I love the story of Jesus flipping over tables in the Bible, because I'm like, yo, what got Jesus that crunk that he wanted to go flip some tables?
We love crunk Jesus.
That's my favorite Jesus.
That's my favorite Jesus is crunk Jesus.
I actually think these evangelicals need to read that Jesus,
I agree.
right?
He's Kojic on the side.
Hello?
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking about that story, thinking about everything that's happening in the world, and then also thinking about what I wanted to do next in life, professionally and personally. And what I talk about in this book, having all of these accolades, doing all these amazing things, not only was I stuck, I was not really happy. And all of those things were happening at the same time, and yet I'm getting these questions, whether it was related to what is happening with the pandemic, the election, with George Floyd's murder. How can I have impact? How can I disrupt the world? How can I make the world a better place? And I realized that all of us have purpose, that if we collectively understand our purpose, collectively that does advance society. But the reality is we have to do the work to get into our purpose. And part of that is being your authentic self, your courageous self. And look, I am a Virgo in 4 houses. That means I'm not really vulnerable. I don't like to, go somewhere that doesn't necessarily have a plan or whatever it may be. And I realized I was holding myself back. And the more that I was holding myself back, the further away from my purpose I was, and the further away from doing the disruptive work in community with other people that was required for such a moment like this. And God was like, well, that's the book. Like, yes, you can write the book about the women's movement, about the Democratic Party, and the need for a new party. You can do all those things, but you actually need to help people understand their own sphere of influence, but it starts with self. Yeah. And so it came during that time, and honestly, the book, I tell all my business in it, y'all. It came through a time where I actually had to go through this journey. in order to answer the question, how can I disrupt my community in a way that doesn't feel so hard for people? Because so often, and you know this, Joy, people feel as though you have to have a huge platform, be an elected official, or you can't have impact. But actually, all of us can do something. And so that's where it came from.
And I think that's so important to say that, because I think that people are feeling so disrupted in this moment that we're going through, right? And people feel sort of so out of kilter that people are asking, well, what can I do? But as you say, and I think as this book illustrates, you have to get yourself together. You have to gather yourself before you can gather the world. So now, because I am a journalistic professional, I brought props. I'm gonna bring props, and so I'm gonna show you guys some of the props that I brought. Do you guys mind? Can I show you guys my props? Okay.
And I don't know what these props are, y'all. She wouldn't let me see them.
Yeah, I wouldn't allow her to see it when we were in the back room. I wouldn't let her see it. I'm gonna show you the props. All right, so. Now, the first thing I wanna show is you talk a lot about being a disruptor. And again, we talk about Disruptor Jesus. We talk about MLK, who gets sort of, he becomes sort of a postcard of not his real self when people don't talk about the disruption that he did, the fact that he was actually, you know, a lot more of a disruptor than that one line people quote. And so it was one of my favorite things about the way that you told your story around the idea of disruption. And there's a reason why. You mentioned Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I was so...
And might be a few sorors in here.
Maybe. And as you may know, I many years ago fulfilled a lifelong dream by becoming an honorary member of this esteemed sorority, the best sorority. We love all the D9. And I have to show you, when I was just in Selma, I was in Selma for the 60th anniversary, and one of my line sisters, the wonderful Colette B. Smith, she made us a gift. Can I just show you this gift?
Yes, please do.
These are our line jackets, okay? And we each have a name. We call ourselves the Justice League, our little group.
Accurate.
Can I tell you what my name is? I am a Trey on the line.
Uh-huh.
Come on. And here's my line name.
Oh my gosh.
Disruptor, the Disruptor. That's like my nickname.
Oh my goodness.
In my little group. And so as I'm reading the book, we actually listened to the book. I was on a road trip to New York listening to your book with my daughter and one of my dearest friends. Oh. And as I'm reading it and you're talking about disruption, I was like, oh my God, she wrote this book in part.
This is so divine.
I know, it's divine intervention. I'm like, I'm literally gonna be interviewing Alencia on this book and she's talking about disruption. So I had to show you that prop.
Oh my goodness.
Talk about the idea of being a disruptor, because I think people have tried to make that a negative term. It's a term that says that you are out of step. Right. With whatever is happening in the world, and you are disrupting it. Why is that a positive term, and why did you use it?
Listen, you know, I think about, and actually I think I was telling you how there were some people going back and forth with if I should even include it in my book title, and I was like, well, the whole book is about disruption, so whether or not it's in the title, it's gonna be the whole book. Like, I'm not changing what this book is about. And the word kept coming to me because in so many spaces, whether it was in my faith or in places of advocacy or political campaigns, folks considered they were disruptors. And I was like, well, what does this really mean? Because if, in mainstream terms, I think we hear it a lot in Silicon Valley and these business disruptors, and I actually think we give those folks too much credit because they tend to start tearing up our government. So I thought about disruption, and I said, well, it's not the Tasmanian devil who barrels through a town and has no purpose and just destroys everything. A disruptor knows that something in front of them is holding back progress. Something in front of them, this table, this proverbial table, is no longer serving us. And speaking of sorors, I talk about Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, the late Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm in the book. And yes, there's that saying of if you don't have a seat at the table, bring up your folding chair. But I've been in a lot of places where that table just doesn't serve us anymore. And as a disruptor, you have to go and intentionally say, I'm going to tear this down to build something better. That creates space for more people, that creates space for people who are left behind with the original tables that aren't created with people who look like us. And so I want to use it as a term that I think change maker is a little soft. Disruption is supposed to grab your attention. The pandemic was a disruption, right? What has happened in these elections have been disruptions of people's responses, but I think we can reclaim that word and the way that we respond to it and decide to take what was meant to destroy us and actually make it something greater. And I think, and I also want to let the term be powerful, empowering for folks who tend to look at me for, and yourself, right, as leaders they're looking at us for things to do. They look at us as disruptors. But all of us have that in ourselves. We all have something that we are fed up about in the world, in ourselves. And so disruption gives you the permission to, well, go flip it over. It's not working. Why are you waiting for someone else? You are literally the one that you're waiting for. And I think disruption actually gives you that power. But you have to approach it in a way of knowing that I'm going to build something better. Because if that's not your end goal, then, I mean, you're just terrorizing communities at that point.
Indeed. Right? Okay, I have one more prompt. We're going to show another prompt. Now, this is also a lesson to all of you future book authors. And I'm sorry, I'm going to try to get this to come up here. Hold on one second. This is a complicated prompt.
Joy came prepared.
I did.
Literally, from a road trip to...
Okay. So, now those of us who've written books know that one of the most important things is the swag box. You create, when you create a book, one of the things you have to do is you have to get people excited about it who want to turn around and talk about it. And so very lucky people, and I'm very lucky to be one of your friends who received one of these boxes. And there's some stuff in it that I want to show. Do you mind?
Yeah.
Okay. So this box came, of course, with the book, but it also came with some other important things. This one, I'm going to hold it up. This is a 5-minute journal that comes in the book. Mm-hmm. And this brings me to another aspect. There's also a really gorgeous candle, which I'm going to use.
I take care of my people.
Yes. And one of the reasons that I wanted to show that is that you didn't just write a book with prose in it, with advice in it, with ideas in it, and we're going to talk about those, but you also wrote a book with assignments in it, where you, at the end of each chapter, you say, here are some things that you can do and that you should do as you're reading this book. That's a different approach. Why did you take that approach?
You know, I don't think when I was working through the book proposal, initially that wasn't part of it. But when I went through my own journey, again, I talk about a lot my own journey of disrupting myself, there's a point in that journey over the last few years where I quit therapy. And I was going through a whole lot of things. And I was like, well, I don't think I'm going anywhere else in therapy. And what I realized is I was not doing the work for myself. I was sitting here like, oh, this frustrated me. Let me talk to Dr. J on Monday at 5 p.m., right? And like really letting go of the ability for myself to go through the process of figuring things out and trusting myself. And so as I was talking about my journey and how I got to the other side, I said, well, what are the things that you actually did? Some of that was journaling. And I love this 5-minute journal because it teaches you to focus on gratitude, but beyond the easy, oh, thank you guys for waking me up today, which is something we need to be grateful for, right? But figuring out a way to find gratitude in little moments every single day, even when situations are extremely hard. I tell this story about how I got my first job in politics working on President Obama's re-election campaign in 2012. And how, as our friend Abby said the other night, she was like, you kind of manifested that. I said, yeah, there's the scripture that says, that in paraphrasing, that says life and death is in the power of the tongue. And so what does that look like to speak life over yourself and into your dreams? And so I had to really break down the ways in which I moved through some of those places that were really hindering me. And then on the other side, I get questions a lot of like, how did you navigate an interesting career? I mentioned I worked for Senator Warren. Well, that was a really interesting decision for me because there were a lot of people that were surprised I worked for her campaign versus then Senator Harris's primary campaign. And I said, well, let me explain to people the process here, right? Let me explain to people the process that I put myself through in a career that's over a decade long that gets me to a place that I can be a social impact advisor. And so it was really important for me to give you all the tools to disrupt yourself and figure out what works for you. I give examples, but we're all different people. Yeah. So we got to figure out what works for ourselves. And then especially the disruption of community, there's some very practical steps that it is imperative that you all take those steps. For us to change what is happening literally right now, it is imperative for us to do that. And so the self-exercises and the reflection is extremely important, especially because, too, it helps you keep a journal of your journey through it. And at times when you feel stuck, I talk about this a little bit, too, in the book, it's important to have proof points. Because there are times when we don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. We want to stop going, but then you got to go back to that moment of like, well, I overcame this. And even if it's something small, you still overcame it, right? And if I can overcome this small thing, I can overcome this again. Everything isn't going to defeat me. And so it was really important for me to share some of the things that I do daily, and I have to go back to.
And one of the things I really enjoyed was, you have this set of questions. Who are you? Who am I? How do I show up in the world, right? And these are really actually the hardest questions. So tell me, who are you?
Well, that question is, I had a therapist who asked me that question, and she told me I could not answer it with any of my accolades or any of my professional achievements.
And she talks about it in the book, that she literally cut off the ones that you would obviously say, well, I am a person who has worked on these presidential campaigns. I am a political operative.
Bio.
Right, and she said, no bio. So who are you?
So Alencia is a person who loves to explore, and I love people. And I am actually a creative person. I'm perpetually late.
I can relate.
I have time amnesia, do not agree, family and friends. But I am a person that loves to constantly learn. And I don't say that just in the perspective of my professional achievements, but I love to understand other people and different perspectives, because that is also, it leads to the other part of me, someone who loves connection and community. As much as I have, and I talk about this in the book, I had to tear down a lot of walls that were hindering my ability to deeply connect with folks. I actually deeply crave intimate connection. And I love community. And that's why I was so much of a people pleaser. That's why I would put people, other people's needs before my own. But it's not a bad thing to crave that connection. It's the way that we go about it. And so when I started to understand those pieces of learning and connection, that's part of who I am, it really opened the doors to connect the dots in so many other areas of my life. I also don't like to be on journeys by myself, so when my therapist asked me that question, I definitely posted it on social media and dragged everybody else in my life. I said, well, who are you? Because I'm sitting over here in pool of tears, and I need y'all to be as well. But it also reminded me that I am a person who is worthy of joy, love, rest, regardless of what I do and who I'm with, and we all are those people. And answering that question allowed for me to unpack why I only felt worthy when it was attached to my professional achievements. And that's some hard work.
It is hard work. You also are a PK, for those who are not familiar, preacher's kid. And I had a chance to meet your wonderful, lovely parents and your auntie. And so talk a little bit about, because you talk about your faith. You're very open about it. You're a Book of Matthew Christian, which I respect, because I too am a Book of Matthew Christian. And you literally talk about your spiritual journey and how that intersects with your attempts to ground yourself in who you are in order to move forward and make an impact. Talk a little bit about how spirituality impacts you.
Yeah, I think for me, I know for me that grounding is incredibly important. And there's research that shows whether or not you're a person of faith, a spiritual grounding actually helps propel you more. And I just know that there are so many things that I have gone through, or so many things that have happened in my life. I'm like, this was literally God, because I couldn't have gotten here on my own. And it's also been the guiding, the Matthew, Jesus, right? I always say, people need to read the red text in the Bible. But
it would help, wouldn't it?
It would help a whole lot. It'd make our work a little bit easier, right? But that's always been the guiding principle for me when it is everything that I do in the world, right? The people that I advocate for, the campaigns that I join, the organizations that I work with. And for me, they were never devoid of each other, right? That I am supposed to make sure that I am my brother and sister's keeper. We are supposed to be the salt of the earth, and we are supposed to light the way for other people, right? That is who Jesus was. And it grounds me and anchors me. So my faith grounds me personally, especially when I'm facing adversity. And I realize that when life is kind of in turmoil, I'm like, oof, I think I'm moving further away from God, and I'm actually not trusting him as much as I could be to get to the other side. And as we think about my career, to be honest, I never really thought I had to reconcile with my faith and my politics until I started working at Planned Parenthood. And I was like, well, no, this all makes sense. Like being on the side of progress, making sure that everyone is taken care of and healthy and safe, this all makes sense. And then I realized that not only does my faith anchor me, it disrupts other people's perception of who people of faith are. And so I carry that with me every single day. And to be honest, faith is the reason that I can go after those things that, quite frankly, people say are impossible, because my God tells me that what we think is impossible is completely possible to him, right? And that there's a bigger purpose and a reason, right? It is the reason that when something happens to us and everyone is saying that it's going to defeat us, that it actually means that there's something bigger on the other side, right? I think you might know a little something about that too, right?
Indeed. And you started off saying that you don't see yourself as particularly vulnerable, but you get pretty vulnerable in this book.
I did.
You tell a lot of truths about your life, about your experiences. I think one of the most poignant pieces of the book is you talk about the pain I think that a lot of particularly women felt around the Kavanaugh hearings. When Justice Kavanaugh was affirmed to the Supreme Court, and I can just remember at the time, the MSNBC audience is so hopeful. They thought somehow it would be defeated. We would literally say on AM Joy every day, no, he's gonna get on. He has the votes. And I think that people had this sort of sense that maybe the moral suasion of his accuser would defeat him. And when it didn't happen, people lost a lot of hope. People became distraught. And you talked about your own experiences, your own personal experiences around these very similar issues that were really, I'm sure, tough to write about. Talk about both, how did you get to the place where you could write about really deeply personal things that you knew your parents would read, right? And that you talked about with your family, but also how you sprung back from disappointment, how you spring back from disappointment. Because you also talk about, which I think a lot of people can relate to, writing this book in the midst of the last election and how you felt after the last election.
I mean, I was editing this book when He Who Shall Not Be Named, there was that attempted assassination on his life. And also, a few weeks later, Vice President Harris became the Democratic Party nominee, right? And I'm in the middle of editing the book. And there's all of these emotions happening. And I'm so glad you brought up that chapter where I do talk about the Me Too movement. And in order for me to get to that place of sharing so much about me, I had to find the courage myself to be so open and be so vulnerable. I talk about how, I would rather be propelled by courage versus crippled by fear. And in order for us to be able to tell our stories, we do have to have courage. And courage, the reason I'm so focused on courage versus brave and fearlessness is because for me, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the reminder that there's something greater than our fear, right? And that goes back to your question about our faith. And so you're talking about when I disclose that I too am a survivor of sexual assault. And I talk about it in the book. I talk about it in the vein of how powerful our stories are. So often people say, well, I don't have the money, I don't have the platform, all of these things. But yet we have our story. And that doesn't require any money. But it does require a lot of courage to tell your story. And to tell your story in very intimate settings. Again, I can sit on these stages, we can sit on television and talk about all these issues, but it is that family and friend conversation where you are really going to make an impact and some inroads when you tell your story. And so I think about these movements, so the Me Too movement, what was happening around Justice Kavanaugh, and people are seeing all these things on television, and they're reading about it in newspapers and magazines, and they're thinking, well, these are people with prominent titles talking about their stories. But what was so galvanizing about that movement were so many everyday people sharing their stories with loved ones who had opinions because it hadn't come home yet. But then when it comes home, I hope you think about it differently because it's someone you love that you can touch. And I want people to understand how powerful our stories are, and those can't be taken away from us. I mean, they can try, when they're gutting the Department of Education and erasing things out of history, but we always have our stories. And your story plus your story plus your story and so on, thousands and thousands of stories create a movement. And for me, I said, I have to then tell my story too. in order to inspire other people to find that courage to tell their own story. So I share that story. I share some things that happened in my childhood, some things that happened in college, because I want other people to also realize that I think this happens for people with platforms. They don't think we go through things, right? They don't see what has actually made us to get to this space, but it actually humanizes us. And telling our stories allows for us to humanize one another and expands our capacity for grace with one another when we understand other people's experiences. And then maybe we will be able to build communities that are more connected. They have more love, they have more grace. And then maybe we can vote differently. But we first have to see each other at a human level, and that starts with sharing our stories. And I can't ask people to share their story, and I don't share my own story. And the interesting thing about this, I wrote all of this in the book, developed this courage to talk about myself, to be vulnerable. I think back to October, I don't write about this in the book, I think about in October 2024, I was doing an interview on CNN. And they were talking about someone who was accusing that man over there of sexual assault. And the conversation was getting very heated between me and a Republican man. And I ended up disclosing that I too am a survivor. And I brought in the rage of hundreds of thousands of women who did not have that platform. And had I not worked through that courage, I wouldn't have been in that position to use my position to speak for the millions of women who feel voiceless. And that's what telling our story does. No matter if you have a platform or if you're just sharing with your friends and family, it is extremely important, and it can shift people's perception of an issue that you may not have been able to talk about with them, but because you have this personal story, there's a different connection.
It's that saying that religious folks say that you know the glory, but you don't know the story.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
and you
right.
need the story in order to understand that no matter what your individual position or job is, you're still going through a lot of the same
That's
struggles.
right.
And for one of the things that's sort of interesting about your story, and you're a millennial, I will out you as a millennial, and as a Gen X person, I don't understand this self-care stuff. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Your book is helping me. We're just literally like, we'll sleep when we're dead. Like, it's fine. We don't need breaks. Work from home? Ha! We'll get COVID for the cause.
Come in the office.
I know, come into the office. No, actually, I love working from home, by the way. Working
Me
from
too.
home is amazing. But one of the things that is sort of interesting, because you are in that sort of a millennial generation, because there's a hinge part of the millennial generation that is very achievement focused. And that it puts a lot of pressure on yourselves to achieve. And your biography is obviously quite impressive, and you've achieved a lot at a very young age. But you reveal in the book that there's still a lot of vulnerability and a lot of self-doubt that goes along, and that I think people wouldn't know that story and wouldn't expect it. So talk about working through this sense of, I've achieved this, and yet, that ... Where does that come from in your mind? Where have you gotten to, and how do you overcome it?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I'm an older millennial who does believe in hard work too.
That's that second piece of the millennial. The younger ones are like, I don't need to go to work. I'm never going to work. I'm staying home forever.
And because I'm sure there's some Gen Z in here, but
we love y'all.
The amount of self-care days y'all need. I'm like,
they're like, I have yoga at 2. I can't be in the meeting.
And listen, I go to Pilates, but I'm like, can you get the work done first?
My children are millennials and Gen Z, so I'm not dissing anyone that I'm not related to, but go on.
No, I appreciate that question, because I very vividly remember after I'd started my own business, which I'm an accidental entrepreneur. But part of that is because I got tired of being in institutions where like folks were questioning my decisions or the things that I was doing, and yet they were paying all these consultants all this money to tell them something that myself and the other Black women in the organization had already told them. Like, but y'all don't want to pay us. Oh, okay. I'm going to be over here now, like, checked out there. But I remember very successful entrepreneur. I felt like I had all the things. I was going all the places, doing all the things. And I was sitting in my bedroom, and I was like, but girl, are you really happy with everything? You're constantly on a flight. You're constantly at this event. What are you running from? And I was like, ooh. So this is a conversation with just myself.
Well, the lights ran from us.
They
Where'd
did. The light did run.
Where are they running from? The truth.
Listen. Well, we gonna get this truth.
We still gonna get the truth even in the dark.
And I literally, I was doing the work. I was like, Alencia, don't run from this feeling. Don't run to like dinner with your friends. Sit here. What are you feeling? And I was running from myself, running from wanting the things in life, personally and professionally, that society, right, has told me as a Black woman I shouldn't want or desire. And it really helped me unpack, well, right, why did my ancestors come here? Oh, they were brought here, they were forcefully brought here to be labor or give birth to labor. And so, of course, this society doesn't want a free Black woman who was like, oh, I'm done working. I'm gonna go over here and hang out with my friends, we're gonna go travel, and actually I would like a family, so let me family plan, like all of these things. And so I had to really sit there and was like, Alencia, you have to not only face yourself, but you have to face a world, especially a nation, that literally tells you that Black women's bodies are just to birth labor. And that is the only thing we're allowed to do and that we are worthy of. So I am fighting a system as well as the pressure that I put on myself. But then I also started paying attention to what was happening around me. The rates of death by suicide were going up for millennials, especially Black millennials. The fact that I talk about this in the book too, I had a nervous breakdown that put me in the hospital when I was in college because I was overachieving. But for what? Why are we doing all of this? And so, you know that phrase, I don't catch feelings, I catch flights? I got to a place where I was like, I actually kind of want to catch all these feelings. Like, I want to feel what's happening. I want to be present when I'm on vacation with my family. I didn't become an entrepreneur to build this big agency that was going to make me work 36 hours a day. I actually became an entrepreneur so I had more flexibility in my schedule to do the things that I said I wanted to do. That was spending time with loved ones, that was taking care of honoring my body, that was no longer, even though I worked for one of the largest healthcare organizations and advocacy groups in the country, I was putting my own personal health aside. And so y'all are, right, because I know a whole bunch of y'all in here too are doing all of that. And so I had to give myself the permission to put myself first, and also realizing being vulnerable with myself and facing myself, the more honest I was with myself and then getting to the root of who I am, that actually does make me better for the service that I do provide to other people, right? And that shouldn't be the first reason that we're breaking down ourselves. But it happens to be the beautiful overflow of what does happen, because as a people, we do believe that we are connected to each other, right? And we're required to be, and you talked about Dr. King, we're required to be in this beloved community, and what does that look like? The other piece of this too, is I believe when we don't take the time to disrupt ourselves and work through the things that are challenging us or that we're like continuing to bury, they will pop up in ways that we can't control. They pop up in the ways that we interact with one another. And I've been in so many spaces, again, you all know my resume. So we're all doing these things to propel society forward and to fight for communities, and yet we were harming each other. And I said, well, we can't even treat each other well, but we're telling this world, these systems, to treat people like us better. That wasn't adding up. And so it's imperative to do this work, to be in community and relationship with one another and to treat each other better. And that is so imperative. I mean, it also goes back to a principle of my faith. And so that was some of the process and the unraveling as I was literally sitting in my bedroom, and I was just sitting there looking in the mirror like, what are we gonna do?
And the QR code went away. The cute little QR code went away. So if we could please put that back up, because I want you guys to get in on this. And I see the questions are starting to flow in, so I want to thank you all for that and keep them coming. Now, when you all get to chapter 16, now, I'm telling you, I read a book if I'm going to interview somebody, okay? I don't like to just talk. I like to read it and get into it. You talk about salt. And you talked a little bit, the salt of the earth. And I think, for us religious people, we know that biblical term. But you talk about salt as being both a purifier and an enhancer, because we know salt does both things. Talk about how that relates to how we can, be in this world, present ourselves in this world as people who want to be change makers, being an enhancer and a purifier. What does that mean?
Ooh, you really did read the book.
I did.
And also, you're giving the plug that, finish the book, y'all.
Yeah.
Because
get all the way there. It's fabulous.
That's one of my favorite chapters, and it's towards the end of the book. And so in the purification piece, I talk about that in the vein of being a truth teller. And it's really hard sometimes for people to be a truth teller. Because for whatever reason, it's like, well, I don't want to lose my position here. It is hard. Telling the truth is really hard. And we have to get to a place of focusing on the truth no matter what. And if we have to break down some things, getting rid of the things that aren't working for us. So I think about the labor movement, which is what I talk about a little bit in that chapter. The labor movement brought to the forefront, and it does bring to the forefront, it brings to the forefront what does work and what does not work. It cuts the fat, it cuts the poison. There's a whole lot of purification that needs to happen in Washington, D.C. right now, right? On Capitol Hill and that
Amen.
White House and all these spaces. And so in order for us to solve problems, we gotta get to the root first. We gotta get rid of all of this other stuff. And then on the flip side, this enhancer, that truth brings opportunity. It shows us the path forward. It starts to illuminate that there's something bigger here than even my imagination, which is why I talk about having a disruptive vision. And so oftentimes we look at something that will maybe we feel like it might hurt us. But just because something hurts or it's a little painful at first doesn't mean it will fully harm us. Sometimes we actually have to go through a little bit I think about like a surgery, right? The recovery might hurt a bit, but on the other side, it's actually supposed to make you a lot better. And that's how I look at kind of salt, right? So long as it's not causing harm that we can no longer, that we cannot recover from, it brings us to a place where we can actually be who we're destined to be and be the best version of ourselves. And a lot of times it doesn't take that much salt to enhance something, because I think sometimes we try to inspire people, or we try to get them to do something, we try to motivate them, and sometimes it is a little too much and they're not ready to receive it. Sometimes it just takes that little bit of encouragement. Just like a little pinch of salt on that chocolate chip cookie to make sure it's like, the flavor is enhanced.
Some Lowry seasoned salt, just to make sure your food tastes.
Right. And so it's important to really understand the duality of bringing out truth and the purity of something and getting to the root of something. And that's why I love just really thinking through what does salt mean and what does this look like in the Bible, and what does light mean, and how we should move through the earth, and how we should constantly be truth. I just get back to this place of being a truth teller and what that does.
And one of the things you did, and then I'm going to get to the questions that are really filling up here. You told some truths about some relationships, even in your own family, that you had to reevaluate in terms of whether they were serving you. And that, I think, is the hardest thing. That's the hardest truth that we sometimes have, right? Is to confront the idea that there are some relationships that are actually not serving us, and how to take a step back. Talk about that.
Oh, yes. So, yes, I did tell all my business. Because there was one point in this journey, too, where I had to think about romantic relationships. I was like, wow, I keep dating the same person, but none of them know each other. So, what's the common denominator here? Probably me. But then, where is that coming from? And then I looked at some friendships, and I was like, what's not serving me? Why am I constantly getting agitated here? Some professional relationships. Why is this just not working? Why are we rubbing up against each other? And just constantly peeling back the layers. I talk about some childhood trauma, and particularly with a certain family member, and how that was impacting so many of my relationships. And I got to a place of understanding that, above all, yes, your relationship for me, with God, for whoever your higher being is, your relationship with self is most important. And in order to honor your relationship with yourself, you have to really understand that you are worthy of love, that you are worthy of people seeing you as who you are and accepting all of those things. And any relationship that does not honor that is not the relationship for you. But I also talk about a lot in the book, too, friendship breakups. I don't think we spend enough time on that, particularly as women, particularly as Black folks, particularly as Black women, because our friendships are our community.
Right.
And friendship breakups are really, really, really hard. Yeah. And something that I put in the book, too, is that the grief that comes with shifting relationships, family, friends, romantic relationships, sometimes we want to run away from the grief where we say, well, wait, no, I thought that leaving this relationship, I would feel better, but why am I still sad? But I think that's an indicator that we're human, right. that relationship meant something, and it should mean something to you. But yet, every relationship isn't going to take you to the next place, and every relationship isn't supposed to be with you in the next step of your journey. And there's a way to honor that relationship for what it did in your life, and thanking it and being appreciative of it, while also understanding that, I've let go of this, but yet I've created space for so much more. Right. And sometimes, I think in our loss, we are so focused on what happened, the negative result there, or who isn't there anymore, while not focusing on who is there, right? And also, honoring those past relationships in a space of, wow, this friendship may come back around later on, right? We both just have to go on our journey. And you're able to honor that just as much as I'm going on my journey, and I want people to, be respectful of that, to create space for that. I've got to do the same for the people that I love as well. And just because a relationship ends doesn't mean that you don't still love that person. Yeah. So.
All right, we're going to do a rapid fire now of some of these questions. So we have a lot of questions.
Yes, because I'm long-winded. So yes, we'll do rapid fire.
No, it's all good. Look, as am I. I can overstand. All right, what do you? Chelsea would like to know, what are you currently listening to that makes you feel confident, gets you fired up to take on every day?
Oh, Beyonce all the time.
There's a right answer.
I mean, there's a whole chapter where I talk about Beyonce.
So we have Nick Kober, who is of the Bow Collective. We had a company that partners 300 multi-million Black women CEOs.
Wow.
And my question is, do you feel that entrepreneurship plays a part in empowering Black communities and reducing the Black wealth gap? And if so, how and why?
I love that question. So I answer with yes and, because I believe that multiple things can be true at the same time. I love that there's so many public conversations about Black entrepreneurship and ownership. I am an entrepreneur, and it is a way to generate and create wealth, absolutely. You mentioned the racial wealth gap. I go back to my Senator Warren policy days. Yeah. And the racial wealth gap, as much as Black people are achieving and attaining right now, the racial wealth gap is continuing to widen. And the reality is, when we talk about wealth in this country, at the end of the day, wealth is not going to save us from systemic injustices completely on itself, right?
Yeah, indeed.
And so I think it's an and, right? Because Black wealth is a threat to these systems. That is why what happened in Tulsa happened. That is why they burned down so many of our communities. I think when we are talking about Black entrepreneurship and ownership, it is important, yes, to continue to have that conversation, to invest in Black businesses and to spend your dollars in Black businesses. I'm being more intentional about that. I'm wearing a Black designer right now. Like, we need to be very intentional about that. And at the same time, I still need Black people in those corporate spaces, in those public institutions, to make sure that they are taking care of my people as they come through, that they will green light the Black business that is trying to get that contract, that is the bank teller that sees that loan application that comes across their desk and they say, oh, I will make sure that they get approved. Like, I need us in all the spaces, and I need us to be talking to each other. That is how Black entrepreneurship and ownership is going to help close this gap, so long as we continue to talk to each other.
Meta might be an aspiring author. How long did it take to make this book, and what was your process?
It took me 2 years to write the proposal because I was very scared of it. I was scared of this creative process. It took me a year to write it, but it took me going away. I went to, and I know it's very privileged, but I went to Mexico City for a month.
This was the fun part of the book, by the way.
I went to Mexico City for a month and wrote over half of the book, but I was inspired. What I would share with folks is to get somewhere where you can get rid of all the noise and get into your creativity. Because that is when you're able to just get it out there and let the first draft be a horrible, horrible, horrible first draft, but you just got to get it out.
And get a great editor.
And get a great editor. And also use a public library, because when I wasn't in Mexico, I was using a library in Virginia to do some of my writing.
Love that. All right, how do you prioritize your integrity, this is Ruth's question, when working in politics while also needing to maintain financial stability? It's a good question, Ruth.
Well, that is where my faith comes in.
Pray a lot.
That is where my faith comes in. Ooh, what? I go back to storytelling. And I think of, in every campaign I've worked for, or when I worked at Planned Parenthood, I think of the people that I meet on the road that tell me how policy positions impact their daily lives. I was just in Virginia with my family, and they do a lot of work when it comes to food insecurity and housing insecurity. And there were so many people in this rural community talking about what will happen if children do not have access to free lunch. And so that, for me, is what keeps my integrity, getting connected to the people and not letting my ego become so, oh, well, I'm this, and I know this person and can do this. No, 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 no. It's about the people this work will impact.
Amen.
And so staying connected to the people who are closest to the pain allows for me to continue to move with integrity.
There are so many good questions here. All right, let me see. What is the best way, this is anonymous, ask this question, what's the best way to quietly flip the tables when your free speech places your job at risk? That's a good question.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, one thing, and I do talk about this a little bit in the book, unions are really important. They help protect people. There's also a way to, this is why it's so important to get in community outside of your job. It's so important to build a network. And by being in community, that could be volunteering your time at an organization that is focusing on an issue that you care about that could potentially hold this company accountable. And so you're doing work in service and sharing your story there, and they're able to continue to do some of this work. The other piece of this, the only way that I've been able to navigate some of the spaces I have when I've worked in companies, and to be honest, I haven't been, there are times where I felt like my voice was restricted, is to finding community with some of your colleagues and figuring out ways in which you all can slowly disrupt certain things. And it takes a lot of courage to do that. It takes a lot of intention and discernment to do that. And then, quite frankly, there comes a position when you have to realize whether or not this is serving you.
Yep.
And do I need to spend some time finding another position somewhere? And as I leave, sharing, this is the reason I left this organization. And I want to make sure that every person that comes after me doesn't have the same position or experience.
I'm going to marry these two questions because I think they're both good questions. Jade Gilchrist wants to know if readers could only implement one principle from Flip the Tables into their lives immediately, what would you suggest that be? So put a pin in that. And then Kimberly wants to know, do you have any suggestions on creating the next generation of disruptors? And Kimberly is here with her 12-year-old daughter.
Oh, wow. I love that. So the first thing, and I'm going to say this because this is immediate, like right now. There are a lot of people here who are frustrated with what is happening in our climate right now. And the step that I'm going to give you does require courage, because when I share this with people, they're like, well, I can't do that. Oh my gosh, what about my voice? It is literally to call the people who represent you. And the amount of people who have accolades behind them who are like, well, me calling them? Like, I can't do that. Like, they're scared to do that, because it is an act of courage to pick up the phone and tell somebody in power, hey, I don't believe in this, or hey, continue to vote this way. I actually really want you to leave here right now, figure out your member of Congress, your representative, your senator, but also who is representing you at the local and state level, and call them, okay? And the next generation of leadership, to find confidence in blazing trails by yourself. Because a lot of times people won't understand it, but it is your job to put whatever it is out there in the world that you want to do, your vision out there, and get comfortable with other people having to catch up. Because the reality is, those people who are criticizing you, they didn't have the courage to try. And that's what I want young people to realize.
I'm going to do two more. I'm going to try to get in two more. In your book, Flip the Tables, you talk about finding courage. This is from Alexandria. You talk about finding courage to disrupt. What advice do you have for someone who's afraid to take the first step?
All of us are afraid. I mean, I have worked for some of the most powerful people in the world. I have done work with people, actors and entertainers who have tons of accolades. And guess what? All of these people are afraid of something. All of these people are exposed. And after staffing so many of these people, I got to a place where I said, well, if they're scared, why do I need to hold myself back?
Yeah.
And so reminding yourself that all of us are fearful of exposing ourselves and risking something. And again, going back to courage, there is something greater than your fear. And eventually, that courage will catch up to you if you start making step by step by step. Yeah. So you just have to continue to try to put yourself out there and know that, again, most people that you think are very confident are the most, I mean, you know this too, are the most afraid people. And a lot of the decisions that they make are out of fear. And so just remembering that helps every single day get over that fear.
I'm going to read these last three, and then this is where we're going to finish. But this one is really a message to you. This is Dr. Chris, who says, "Congratulations, Alencia. We are all very proud of you. Leaders speak a lot about how they're compelled to help community. So Dr. Chris wants to know, how has your community lifted you up during the process of your career in book writing, and how can we as a community encourage and support our courageous leaders more?" So that's one question. The second question, I love this one because y'all know I love a library. How can library patrons use the library to help them flip tables, says proud library user. Libraries are under attack, and what's your advice? And then the last question, so I know I'm putting a lot out there for you to remember, and it says, "Thank you, Queens, for showing up in your truth and demonstrating your courage," says Vanessa. As a representative, come on, of the Tuskegee Airmen, give that applause. Come on. And as someone from an immigrant community where mere survival is the primary struggle, how do you stand firm in your truth and move forward with courage, especially when time isn't a luxury and breaking down barriers and dispelling mistrust feels like an impossible task? That's a lot.
Ooh, that was a lot.
It's a lot.
Oh my gosh, there was something in the first one I wanted to touch on too. The second two I think about with the library. I talk about in the book how exploration is extremely important for us, particularly I'm glad you mentioned from the immigrant community, particularly when it comes to the conversation around what's happening to migrants. And libraries, I have a library card at the Arlington Public Library. I should get a DC Public Library one too, I will today.
We're gonna get one from here.
You all can do that. Get a library card. And also use the resources at the library. I think about, we were talking about this in the show Paradise that I have just finished, but there was a lot of scenes in the library, and oftentimes we just think about the fact that there are just books here. There's documentaries, there's things that we can listen to, there's audio, but there's also tools for us to learn how to tell our own stories as well. And so libraries, when I think about exploring, I talk about, yes, it's great for you to travel, and I'm privileged to do so, but a library is literally where you can learn about the world and other cultures. And as you expand your mind that way, you are able to operate in a different space when it comes to who it is that you're in community with, right? Or when you encounter someone, you may not know their experience or their origin story, but you have a greater capacity for them because you've learned so much in an institution like the DC Public Library system, right? And so that's how I would use the library.
And the closing question, and this is going to be, I think this is a really important question. How has your community supported and uplifted you in your journey?
You know what's really important? I think about friends and family and loved ones who, it's so important when you have people around you that can see more in you than you see in yourself. And at times when you are so bogged down with getting from day to day to day to day to day, that my community reminds me of the bigger picture. My community constantly tells me, you remember 10 years ago when you said this is what you wanted to do? And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're like 2 steps from that. Your community also protects you. I have a girlfriend who, as I was going through a lot of this, on this journey, really intentional about this journey, she would constantly share with our group of girlfriends, look, Alencia's like going through this transformative period. And I know it's a little bumpy for all of us as we're trying to figure out how to navigate with her. It's bumpy for her, but on the other side, is the Alencia that is free and liberated. And so your community protects you as well. But the only way that your community can do all of that for you, and I had to learn this, is when you invite them in. You're courageous enough to say, I need help. I don't fully understand this. Today is really hard for me. I need you to fill in the gap in this void right now. So I am grateful to my community. A lot of them are here, who I know personally, but I consider all of you my community now. But I challenge you to invite your community in, because what I learned on this process is when you have a real community, they are so eager to show up for you. So eager. and will tell you the ways that they can. And my line, we're talking about line names. My line name is reciprocity. And I used to get hung up on the, like, it has to be tit for tat, right? Like, I showed up for you this way, and you have to show up for me this way, the same way. But then you realize, wait, no, I'm creating space for your experience and who you are. And so how you show up for me is 100%, but it may look different. But I can accept that, and I can receive that because I understand you, because I've invited you in, and you've invited me in as well. And we're able to build this relationship that allows both of us to show up for each other in ways that are absolutely beautiful. And so I am grateful to God for my community. And you were part of my community. You immediately said yes, because I asked for what I needed. Yeah. So I thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's been an honor. Alencia Johnson, the book is called Flip the Tables. Here it is. And I want to say the name of the designer that you're wearing.
Oh, Andrea Iyama, a Black woman.
There you go. Laura Johnson wants to know. And I think this designer is Black too, but of course my brain doesn't work good, so I don't remember the name of them. But I'm going to post it on social media. We'll all have this on our Instagram. I want to now invite you all, if you have not yet purchased a copy of your book, please do, because there's going to be a very long line to get your book signed by the great Alencia Johnson. Please give her another round of applause. This is an amazing book. It's going to help and feed you. So make sure you buy not just one for yourself, but for anyone you love who wants to be a change maker.
Yeah, thank you.
Because you've shown us how to do it. Alencia Johnson, everybody.
Thank you. And
congratulations, my friend.
We have one more thing. One more thing really quick.
Yes.
Because I believe in community. I would like to thank my dear soror, Brandolyn Anderson. We have some flowers for you. Because Brandolyn, as my community, I told Brandolyn, I said, I think I'm gonna do DC. Joy Reid said, yes, she'll do my talk, and Brandolyn said, I got you.
Oh.
So I believe in giving people their flowers.
Yes.
For everyone to see.
Let's give her a round. Brandolyn, come on, girl.
I know some of you have met Brandolyn because she helped y'all get in the door.
Yes.
Thank you, Brandolyn. I love you. And I also want to give flowers, as does everybody else does, to you, Miss Joy Reid. Because, I mean, it is unspoken, but you have really helped me through this journey, but we all love you. Everybody give it up for Miss Joy Reid.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you
all
so
for
much.
being here. What an amazing crowd and great questions. Thank you all so much. Book signing begins in 3, 2, 1, now.
Oh, we're turning over to Ramonda. And y'all, please give it up for Ramonda, who's the owner of Mahogany Books.
Ramonda, Mahogany Books. Mahogany Books.
Who also said, sis, I got you.
Yes.
Absolutely. So really quickly, there's some signing instructions. Can we turn the house lights up really quickly? But first of all, please help me give it up for Joy-Ann Reid and Alencia Johnson. Yes. And I also want to, just a quick shout out. I want to give a shout out, of course, to Brandolyn, so thank you as well. But to the DC Public Library, give it up for the entire team here. Yes.
Tansy, Ryan,
yes,
Chanel.
Yes. And also to the DC Public Library Foundation. So give it up for the Library Foundation as well. As a small bookstore, to be able to do something like this in partnership with these organizations means a lot to us. So thank you all for being here. Really quickly, some instructions. Because all of your books are signed, we try to be a little bit smart today, smarter. All of your books are signed. We're going to take a group photo on this stage. If you have your book, we would love for you to hold it up high. If you're supposed to be at work, put your book right here. We'll do a selfie with the audience in the back. We'll do a photo with all of your books up. So just give us a moment to do that. And lastly, if you would like to get a photo with Miss Alencia, I need your, I need your help here. We're gonna have you line up against the wall. Not yet, because if you wanna do this photo, but I'll need you to line up against the wall, and we'll just have you come person by person up front. Have your cell phones ready. So I'll give you that instruction once we take this photo, but it'll be lining up against this wall here to take a photo. But again, give yourselves a round of applause. We're about to flip some tables, Alencia. Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Giving me motivation.
Make sure you hold your books up high, high, high. I see them.